Welcome back to Fewladelphia, where last time we introduced a bike network to the city, which came with its own issues. We'll address some of that in this video. But now we're getting back to building, and specifically in our old industrial town of Beryl, where an empty island has been laying bare and undeveloped for quite some time. So today we're going to be taking real-life inspiration from Philadelphia's Venice Island to create a multifunctional district to bring this area of the city to life. Let's dive in. So just before we get into it today, I want to spend a little quick moment talking about bikes. As you know from the last episode, we had some big problems where there were way too many cyclists and they were backing up all over this bridge and all the way down our cycle highway down here. And as you can see, it's a little bit better because I have just deleted half of my bike parking. So if we take a little look, after last episode, I had almost 4,500 parking spaces available. I massively overdid it with plopping all the racks everywhere and that sort of thing. I've halved it now, so we're down to 2,200. Still got a little bit of availability there, but it definitely does seem to have helped with the volume of bikes we've got. You can see down here, we've actually got no backup at this point. Here, okay, yes, we do have a bit of a queue still forming. But I think once I let the city run for a little bit longer, that's going to clear up because all of this has hugely cleared up from what it was. So it definitely seems like the more bike parking you have, the more cyclists you're going to get on your roads. So be a little bit mindful of that when you're placing in your bike parking. We'll take a little look later in the episode and see if it has actually helped or if it's just a fluctuation thing. So we'll come back to that, but yes, the city definitely seems a lot healthier than it was after bridges and ports at least. We still have the death care issues, and I want to shout out a couple of you who on the last episode commented and said maybe it's worth trying deleting all of your death care and then plopping them in again, which is something I'm going to do, but I'm going to do that between episodes because I feel like that might be a little bit painful to watch. So by next episode, I will have done it and we'll come back and see if that has helped with our death care issues. But for today, we're going to be working on our island over here, and you may remember from several episodes back now that we actually took a look at some inspiration in Philadelphia around an area called Venice Island. So this is it here, right on the outskirts of Philly, and this is what we're going to be taking inspiration for today for our island, and there's several things I like in this that we're going to try and do our own kind of version of. And firstly, there's this little playground area down here. And I've worked out this is actually a pumping station. I'm not sure if it's for the lock, the canal. I can't really tell. But we're definitely going to come in and put that in with a bit of a playground, a nice plain, concreted, grey basketball court. Loving that. I'm also loving these flower beds. It reminds me a bit of what we did in ABC Studios. So I think we're going to come in again and do something similar with that around our car parks here. Now, I don't think this building we're going to do much with because our island's a little bit smaller than the real Venice Island, but then we've got this nice big condo block here, so I definitely want to do something with this. And the other thing I'm noticing here as well is the change in concrete texture. So we've got some much darker asphalt over here and lighter concrete around this building. I'm loving this in the centre here. I definitely want to do something with that, and we can see some nice little road markings here as well. Potentially something we could do with some net lanes there. And then we've got these amazing billboards, little overgrown patches like here. And then we've got even darker, brand new asphalt amongst these brand new row housing, it looks like here. So absolutely want to do something similar to this. This is so heavily in blocks. We've also got this one-way network coming up here that I want to recreate. And then we come down to some more condos, which again, I don't think we'll fit this section in. But we do have things like this little tiny, I'm assuming this is a dog park here, the way it's fenced in, and the what looks like the apparatus for the dogs to climb over, which I really like there. And then we got this amazing feature that we are definitely going to do something with. Just open plots here. We've got nice little bits of turnaround sections of roads. We've got a few odd like caravan style things, mobile homes. I'm guessing like workmen huts and this little single house over here. We've got some sheds hidden in the overgrowth. And then we come on to this amazing thing. Look at this. It always looks like trash. We've got semblance of foundations or something in there. I'm guessing this is a building site. I don't know if it's actually now constructed and Google Earth just hasn't caught up or not. I'm not too sure. But yeah, I love this with the containers, piles of things around, a few odd trucks. And then we come out to this amazing area here, which just looks like my heaven to try and do something with, I'll be completely honest. We've got cars parked all around it. We've got piles of whatnot going on here. We've got so many interesting surfaces to take inspiration from here as well. And then also the whole thing is kind of really surrounded in trees. So if we just take the longer view up here, you can see how bushy it is on the outskirts here. We've got some nice rock formations coming out into the Schuylkill River. But then also we have this really interesting feature of this old abandoned rail line, which runs up most of the island. So in places you can see it a little bit more clearly here, right up against the edge of this sort of canal system part of the river here. We've also got this decking on the other side, which I love. We'll come back to that. But yeah, it runs up most of the island, and you can see here it starts to become a lot more overgrown. We've got small sections of it sticking out, which I find quite interesting here. And I think, yeah, you can just about see the semblance of the rail underneath all the overgrowth up until around about this point, I think, and then it sort of starts to disappear. So there is a ton of inspiration for sure on Venice Island, so let's go and dive in and start our own version of Venice Island in Burrill. So down this end, before we hit the bridge, we're going to be putting in a little water pumping makeshift style station, probably not the functional one because it's a little bit big for our island, along with a recreation area, the basketball courts, that sort of thing, and then a condo block. And then we'll come on to the modern townhouses here and finish up with the building site and the quarry down there. But one thing I do want to do before we start is actually move this section of road here, because I'd like to have it coming out at this point so it sort of separates where the recreation ground and the water pumping station's going to go versus where the condo block's going to go. So we'll just use our alleyway road and get that going in straight across there. I am also just going to fix this bridge slightly so it's a little bit more across the middle of our waterway there. And then the first thing we're going to start with is getting in the rail line along the edge, because then we can position all of the buildings around that, of course. So if we come into our train menu, I'm going to use the unelectrified two-way train track from T-Gun's rail infrastructure pack, because I think that's going to give us the best results without those wires featuring heavily in an abandoned rail line, which doesn't really seem to make sense. So we're going to follow this all the way up the outskirts until this point where we'll kind of join it up with the old abandoned rail line that's running through the bottom of Burrill there. But then I think at this point what we'll do is convert it into a pedestrian bridge, so pedestrians can actually get over the waterway here, sort of like they're walking on where the old rail line used to be. I think what we'll do is make it a little bit of a humpback bridge, but that looks terrible, so we're going to need to adjust this quite a bit. And I think we can work with that. It's a slightly off angle, but I don't mind that too much. And then what we do want to do is make sure this is upgraded to a quay side so that we're going to get nice quay walls in here along our little canal edge, and it will make it feel a bit more like a canal at the same time as well. Just having that sharper edge rather than a natural boundary to it. So something like that. We'll work on how pretty that end looks in just a second. And I'm not sure what's happening here. We've probably come a little bit too far away from the original river's edge, so we can just come in and do a bit of landscaping. So that's not too bad, but I've noticed we've got some humps, so we'll tidy those up as we go along. But I did originally think I was going to kind of anarchy in a vanilla quay wall underneath it, but actually we're so low to the water here that you can't really see it, and it's a huge faff to get in, so I've decided against it and we're just going to go for this basic quay wall instead. The fence isn't ideal. Again, cannot wait now that we've got Asset Editor to have some of these networks which have quay walls but no fence. That's going to be really valuable, I think, for my building style at least. Something I'm very, very much looking forward to. But for the moment, that's our rail line in, and of course it will be detailed quite heavily later on. Okay, so I'm going to start first with the condo block, and I'm going to use these Japanese residential medium buildings in a bit of a nice formation, I think, to create our block. Because I did notice on Google Earth it's sort of in a bit of a N shape. I'm not really sure what you'd call this, like double L's and then a bit in between. And it's kind of a little bit, it almost looks slightly Art Deco style. Not that these Japanese buildings look like that at all, but I do think they have some nice interesting features with the balconies And also I quite like the red brick colour, thinking about how we're going to blend it into Baril and what we've already done here. It's very red brick, old industrial town heavy. That's the sort of vibe that we're going for here. So I think these buildings will fit in quite nicely. So we're going to place the left-hand one over there, then we're going to find the right-hand version of it, which is this one, and we'll worry about recolouring them in just a second. And then there is another asset which is kind of similar to this, but straight across, that I think will work quite well in the middle, which is, yes, this one. Now it doesn't look like it, but we can use recolour to make sure that it is in fact like it. But if we place it in here, you'll see, with a tiny bit of move it, that we can get this quite nicely aligned with the windows this side, so it forms a reasonably nice area here. You can still get in there to get into the bike parking that's in that back bit. You can also drive straight through the building here to get out into the car park at the back. The back of it looks kind of sensible. We have got a little bit of window peeking out here, so we want to just adjust that slightly, bring that in as far back as we can. And then we'll also shift it across slightly, so we've got a little bit more of an overlap in there. And that still works from the front section, so that's pretty good. And then we're just going to fuse this in exactly the same this side. We want to make sure those windows are aligned as per the other side of the building, and that we're sinking in just as much to hide that back section there as well. So I think that works pretty well. And I want to take the colours of this building here and paste them onto the others. So if we use Recolor, we can use the colour painting tool to select that building and then just paste them onto the others. Now you can see with this middle building here, just how the building is textured means that the colours come up slightly different. So what I want to do is take that brick texture and just lighten it just a little bit so that it looks slightly more similar to our other assets here. We come around this side, we can kind of see that a bit better, and that blends in pretty perfectly. I don't really mind the green too much, so I think we'll keep that. It's a nice little extra feature on it. But there we have our condo block in this area, and now I just want to work on positioning and the roads with it, of course. So we've got that set up. I think let's shift it over this way, because I'm pretty keen to have that sort of concrete, slightly abandoned area over this side. So we can make this a bit more forested around the bridge, and also moving it away from the bridge is going to help with noise pollution here as well, make it slightly quieter for the residents. So I think somewhere in the middle, just like that, we'll work on the landscaping at the back here to make sure that car park fits in. And then we want to go ahead and get in our road network. So we're just going to use alleyway roads here, because then we can cover them up with a really nice concrete texture when we come in to do that. So I'm going to snap them along to the front of the buildings and then into our road here, which will go off this direction. So we'll leave a little space there for it. And then I'd like to create that little semicircle bit that we saw in the middle here. Try and get some car parking around it if possible as well. Well, something like that doesn't look too bad. The only issue is with this one-way alley street is that it does have parking on it, so cars will just park naturally on the side of the road there. But actually, I'm thinking about it now, and I don't think that matters too much. I think it will still give us the effect that we want there. And then we can also probably squeeze in some of Dome's car parking sideways spaces in here, which, yes, we can just about. I would like to get in that barrier of trees in between this area and the actual rail line, so that only just about gives us enough space. So I think what we'll do is just shift the entire thing back. Just a little touch like that, which will definitely give us space for those sideways car parking spaces along here, and then a barrier of trees. So I think what we're going to do before we move on is actually detail out this area, and then we'll come on to the rec ground and the rest of it afterwards. But just before we do that, a quick word from today's video sponsor, which is Instant Gaming. If you're looking to expand your portfolio of DLCs for Cities Skylines II, look no further than my link to Instant Gaming in the description of this video right down below. Instant Gaming offers massive discounts on a whole host of games, including all of the Cities Skylines franchise, the entire Sims shebang, Planet Zoo and all of its corresponding DLCs, as well as many, many other games. So go and check it out, and also help support the channel by using my link in the description below and bag yourself a deal. Okay, so we've got in our condos with some nice patchy, light-looking concrete next to it and some interesting car park designs around it. I kind of noticed that it was jutting out in a few different places around the condo complex, so that's what we've gone for here, and kind of nicely integrated the car park at the back of this asset into the road as well. So for the moment that'll do. We'll come back and do some detailing along the railway a little bit later. We do also have this little light abandoned area under here where it's a bit overgrown and patchy in places, which I thought was quite a nice touch. So now I want to talk about the row houses that we're going to be putting into this little section over here. So the assets that I do want to use for this are the US Southwest residential row house, this one. Now all of the others don't really fit the bill, but this one is kind of hyper modern, which is sort of similar to what I'm seeing on Google Earth. Now it's not brick faced, it's actually wooden clapboard slats, however you want to call it, but it has that hyper-modern look with the garage underneath as well that I also want to definitely have in here, because I noticed in this section there was no car parking anywhere around the complex. It was all purely garages straight off the road, so that's what I'd like to do here. So I'm just going to drop in one of them for starters, and then we can go ahead and get an alleyway road for this. And the other thing I did want to try and replicate actually was this sort of one-way system that we see going around it on Google Earth as well. So we've got one direction coming out there, and then the other one sort of going round with a slight island sort of space in the middle. So I think this will look kind of cool. And then what we'll do is we'll actually just put this at a slight angle, I think, coming up here at the end into a two-way road. Now I don't like how that's positioned, so let's just angle that a bit more into the centre, yes. And then we also need to, of course, change the direction of this road here. And then we'll have our alleyway road come straight across the little river gap like that. And then this can join up into our access road coming over there. Okay, so now we can go ahead and get some more of these and place them in. And I also noticed on Google Earth they were in blocks of 6. Now we don't have quite as much room in our area as they do on Google Earth. So we're going to sort of shorten some of the blocks and make them slightly different lengths. And we don't have quite enough room really here at the back. So we'll need to do a spot of landscaping there as well. So something like that I'm quite content with. And then we've got the green on the back. I'm wondering if we should maybe change that up a little bit. So we could go for something a little bit more reminiscent of the wood on the front, and also, of course, all the red brick that we have around Baril. So I'm thinking kind of a browny colour, maybe something a little bit similar to this. Yeah, like that is quite nice. So then if we click on the colour painter tool and we select this asset, we can then just really easily copy it onto all of our other assets, which is brilliant. I love this little feature in Recolour here. Like that. Now to finish it off at this end, we will do a car park, but I do also want to change up this bike lane because this is looking kind of nasty going over the railway like this. So let's change and improve this because, yeah, I don't love it. So something like that's a bit smoother and a bit better. We need to sort out this edge, but I think we're going to come in on a stream actually and do this side of the river sometime, which might be quite fun. So watch out for that. Then at the end here, what we'll do is we'll just finish it off with a simple car park. So I'm actually just going to use an alleyway road, I think, for this and try and see if we can get a small car park placed into here. A sort of extra guest parking maybe, because they've all obviously got their own garages. And that'll just kind of finish off that end of the cul-de-sac. So yeah, a bit of detailing to come around and do around here. I want to create some nice pathways, possibly going around the different blocks. And I also do want to add in that little dog park. So I'm thinking to myself now, we might actually extend these out over this side as well. So let's have a block of 4 of them there and another 3 here. And then we can do a little custom dog park, like a brand new one. And we can make this whole section look like it's really, really new built and modern. So hard black asphalt, pristine looking dog park, and some really nice looking pathways with very little mature trees around the centre of it. Probably keep some mature ones around the bank and obviously some overgrownness around the rail line here, but apart from that it's going to be very, very manicured. And then if we come down to this end, let's also take a look at our recreation centre before we start doing some detailing. So I do want to get in a water pump into here, but the default vanilla building is way too huge. So we're going to use some of the static ploppables, this model in particular here, to create our little old water pump house. So I'm thinking around about there, but I do want to come in and get some parking here because we're going to add in the sports fields and a little bit of a small recreation ground over there. But I would like to have a fair amount of parking in up next to it before we do that. So let's put in a small section here and let's tidy this up. And then we'll grab our alleyway road and we'll continue it on down this way and get in a little bit more parking using domes on either side here. So something like that will create a reasonable car park. And then the water pumping station, I'd like it at an angle, sort of something like this. And then if we go back, we have got some extra buildings we can add on to this to make it stand out a little bit more. So I would like to add on the extra garages here. It's got some great little pumps at the back of it, which I just think is a really, really nice touch. So let's add that on. I think that's actually gone in all right first time, so that'll do. And then we've also got these little extra water pumps here too, so I'd definitely like to incorporate some of these along the edge here. I'm thinking if we just place in 3 like that, then it does sort of come across that it was like an old water pumping station that's maybe now defunct, and then we can start arranging the rec ground around that. Now I'm wondering if we can use the vanilla basketball court actual park here just to make it functional, and I don't think we are without it disconnecting from the road. So what we are going to do is use the block services parks so we can have an entrance in here, and then we can expand it using some sports grounds, although we don't actually have a basketball one. No, we do not, but we do have tennis, so let's definitely put that in. Although it is saying there's no walking access, I didn't think these had to be up against a road, but possibly they need to be up against a path. Yes, they do. Okay, well that makes that easy. We can definitely connect that in. And then possibly for the basketball, we might need to use one of Sully's decals and have it non-functional for the time being, because we do have perfect dark asphalt basketball courts just like this one that will work for exactly the vibe that we want to get here. So I think, yes, let's do that. Now, the thing I did see here on Google Earth was we had a quite loud looking, very colourful area next to the tennis court. So I wonder if we could use one of our crazy chirper parks or something similar to recreate this. We have got the circular one, which could be kind of fun to use. Or there's this one as well with the blue edging. I think we'll use this one. And we'll sort of shift this over a little bit. We'll need to remove some of these trees. But I think that could probably sit quite nicely on the end there. And then we have got a ton of detailing to integrate this all in. Some nice path decals around this. Some concrete flower beds around the pumping station to sort of smarten that up a little bit as well. And then possibly actually going out into a bit of a service area with a touch of trash at this point. Okay, so we have ourselves a rec centre and a brand new row housing development. We'll take a closer look at those at the end of the video, but I think they're fitting in quite nicely. And the beautiful thing is here with these row houses, as people move in, they are actually parking in their garages mostly. There's someone driving out of their garage right there. And yes, going into their garage. Wonderful stuff. It's working out quite nicely. Okay, so final part of today's video, let's talk about this end, which is going to be the sort of building site slash little bit of a junkyard area at the bottom. So looking at Google Earth, I kind of noticed that there was a sort of small building area, open plot area as you drive in towards this space. So that's the first thing that I want to do. And for that, I'm thinking I'm going to use one of the Real Vision decals for this because they're so hyper realistic and just sort of ready made. You don't really need to layer them too much with anything. They're just, yeah, come really nicely designed and makes things a little bit quicker to do. So we have got like this one, for example, which would be perfect here. I'm thinking maybe leave a little bit more open grass area. So this could come over here, perhaps where an old building used to be, and then have something that's a little bit more grassy on this side. So that does look like quite a stark difference between the concrete area and the grass area, but I think we maybe get some props in around this, so things like little bushes. We just sink these down into the ground just a tiny touch. So if you go down to the sapling version of the wild green bush one at -1 meters using extra detailing tools, this can make quite nice sort of undergrowth, and that'll help blend in the edge of this concrete area into the grass area a little bit better. And then if we also place some over the concrete area as well, then it doesn't make it feel so kind of standout-ish. And then we'll want to place it all the way around this grassy area, a few in the middle and dotted around here as well. Just like it's kind of been left and overgrown and that sort of thing. And then we'll put some fencing around that and frame that off. So for the main quarry area, I kind of want to come into an area like this part that we see on Google Earth here. So we're going to get an alleyway road and come straight up into it, and we're going to kind of loop around a little bit like this, and then this is going to come up into that slight sort of junkyard area that we can see here on Google Earth at the bottom. So I did see again there was a little kind of like circle inlet bit, maybe for a touch of parking, so I'm going to use the one-way alley with parking on the side so we can get a few cars in there. And then we'll come in and put some sheds at this point, like a sort of foreman's area before you go into the main piles. So we've got this one from the fish farm, actually. Never going to use the inland fish farm, as I have mentioned previously, but really, really like this shed. So I think that can work quite well here. Might want to be a little bit mindful of where that street light is. So let's just shift that over. And I'm thinking some kind of mobile home potentially here. Oh, I do like the Netherlands garden sheds as well, actually. I think we could maybe have one of these in the junkyard area, and then we could dirty it up a little bit. So while I'm thinking about it, let's definitely go ahead and place one of these in down this end. We'll move that around later. Now if we go into static ploppables, we've got this little house here, which looks like it could be a sort of one of those sort of mobile home type areas that could stand in as an office potentially for our little construction site quarry area. So I think let's place that in there as well, and we'll do a touch of detailing around it. And then what we're going to do for this area is actually use the piles of stone. And if you see, it kind of blends in as a similar grey to our default asphalt surface. So we're actually going to fill this with this light asphalt surface all around this area, and then use some decals and things like that around it to fill in the extra spaces. So we definitely want to go for the sort of medium ones rather than anything too much bigger than that. And we can make these slightly more interesting shapes by blending in some of the different layers. So like the smaller ones in with the medium ones, maybe even lifting some up a tiny bit here. That actually looks like it's not even in the terrain. If we lift this up a little bit, tiny bit more, and you can see we can sort of fill that odd gap in between the two peaks there a little bit, which makes it look slightly strange. Need some adjusting on this. But this is the general idea for this area, because we can use a ton of decals to sort of blend them in around the bottom, make it seem all broken up. And also a big help for that is going to be these rubble piles here. So we can use these sunk into the ground just a little bit. So -0.5 is kind of generally okay. And we can kind of loop these around the bottom of these piles to add a little bit more effect. So something like this, which I will go up and tidy up in just a second, but I kind of wanted to show you the general idea. And then once we've got the asphalt surface in underneath that, I think it's going to look pretty good. Having just moved those a little bit on this one, there we go, sinking into the ground, it gives it a slightly more realistic look, I think. We still need a load of decals in there, but that's the general gist. And then for the junkyard area, obviously, it's just going to be a ton of prop and decal work to give ourselves something which hopefully looks actually pretty similar to this. So just before we dive into the build, I want to shout out Ebo, who was this month's Community Challenge winner with this amazing detailed bridge shot in Cities Skylines II. Absolutely love the little trash and graffiti details under this. Amazing work. And if you'd like to take part in next month's Community Challenge, head on over to our Discord where you can find out all the details to enter and be in with a chance to win a game of your choice. Alright, so we have a fully built out island, and like I mentioned before, I think this strip along the edge in between the main area of Baril that we've already built and the island here will come out and do in a stream very soon, so watch out for a ping about that. If you're watching this when the video comes out, it will be the weekend that is happening right after that. But yes, this is our version of Venice Island. Much more scaled down, obviously, than the real thing, but I quite like that we've got so many of the touches in here and kind of made it our own, made it a little bit more Fewladelphia, shall we say. So we have firstly the Junkyard down here, which we've just put in. I love this. Just a combination of various different decals, really, including some of the Static Noises Real Vision ones and Sully's Riverbed Thin. A few of the stain decals as well, and also some of El Gendo's amazing dirt road networks to cover up some of it, and also some of El Gendo's little moss decals as well here. Yeah, really love the effect of this, and then obviously coming in and adding in a few little props here and there. I did also add in a block service industrial building into that little shed, and another one actually in that container, and also another one into this shed down here, which we'll come on to in just a second. But yeah, I think it's a nice little round off to the end of the island, and I'm really liking this sort of overgrown riverbank which hides it all away. So if you're over in Havenwood Village, for example, over here, you can't really see too much of it because of that lovely overgrown riverbed, and that runs the whole way up the island, which I really, really like. And then, of course, we have our little... it's not really a quarry. I'm going to guess it's more of a stone storage yard processing, maybe, more than anything else. I'm not too sure about this. It's really hard to find the right decals that match these stone piles. Like, I wish I had something that was basically that texture, which could spill out onto the gravel around it, so a flat decal to put at the bottom of them. But that being said, I do quite like the element of the rubble around it. I'm just not sure it's like hyper realistic. And then of course all of the trash kind of debris decals that we also put here too, just to muddy it up a little bit. One thing I do really like is putting in these Real Vision, they're sort of like donut marks, decals like that underneath, because it gives it that sense of having lots of trucks coming in and turning around. Then of course we've got some cracks and stains and things like that across the top, which I think just breathes a bit of life into that surface. So I quite like the concrete surface around it, but less keen on the piles, so we may see about that later on. And then of course we've just got a few little odd things in and around our workshop area over here. A few vehicles and also some invisible parking from Dome here as well. And then we've obviously got the plot here, which we put in. I did add in a few little rubble piles into this just to help make it look a little bit more abandoned, but I think the effect comes across there at least. Particularly like these bushes spilling in over the corner here, overgrowing the fence. Quite like that little touch. Then I did also put in this tiny little bit here. I saw something similar on Google Earth that was just kind of like going out to, I think it was a dirt track along the edge of the river, but we didn't really have enough space for that here. So we just got a tiny bit of trash hidden away in the middle of the bushes over here. And yeah, we've still got lots of people moving into our modern townhouse development over here. So I'm very often guilty of not leaving enough open green space, and hopefully that's not been the case around these. So we obviously still have the overgrown riverbank. I like to think this development came in and knocked down whatever was in the middle of it and kept those trees around the edge. But then the rest of it, I've used some of Gaga RXM surfaces here just to add a little bit of extra colour to the grass to make it look like it's sort of just been planted or built over, so it's still got a bit of that sort of sandy dirt touch to it, but that is left all around all of these buildings. So there's lots of open space in between each of the little blocks here. We've also got a picnic table in there, and then we've obviously got some smart brickwork pavement surfaces out the front. The black asphalt I really, really like, makes it look like it is brand new. And then our brand new dog park over here, which I'm actually pretty pleased with. I followed what was on Google Earth and tried to do this sort of pattern around the edge of some mulch, or at least what looked like mulch in the middle of it. And I think it works quite nicely. I did use one of the block services parks for this, so this is a functional dog park. Hopefully someone will actually come and use it. It hasn't got the highest entertainment value because of course it is literally just the dog park, but it's technically functional, so we'll see. And then we've added a few extra props in around it just to sort of extend it out. But yeah, pretty pleased with that overall. Yeah, really loving the modern housing development here. I did consider whether to add access onto the bike road here, which is something we could do. If anyone feels strongly about it, let me know in the comments below. We've got room here to add a sort of underpass and maybe sweep it up onto the bridge from this direction. But yeah, as you can see, it's still pretty busy over this bridge, not quite as busy as it was. So yeah, let's take a little quick look at bikes before I forget. Now we do still have an issue. So in general I think it's helped, and I'll come on to why in just a second, but this bit is really bad here, and it's this junction that causes all of the backup. You can see if we go further down the bike network here, it's nowhere near as busy. Like, there's still people using it, but they're not backing up for miles on end, even at this junction here. And the other place that was super busy last time was this junction in particular, and as you can see, there's nowhere near as many bikes. So I think by deleting a lot of that bike parking has really helped. Although I say that and then, wow, we've got a ton of them back here. So yeah, maybe it's helped, maybe it hasn't. But either way, I definitely think this intersection over here needs some work. So I'm going to spend some time between episodes planning how we can better this. I'm thinking maybe a sort of bike underpass that takes them off and round through this neighbourhood perhaps. So we'll see. We'll see. If you've got suggestions, let me know and we will come back and do something with that bike network because it's definitely not working. The rest of the network, actually, I have to say, around Fisher's Point is doing pretty well. It's really just this section which is just crazy busy for whatever reason. So anyway, let's finish up looking at the build, and we have our condo block here that we did see earlier with the patchy concrete, really like that, and then the flower beds that we did around the ABC TV studios, so that mulch texture with a few little bushes. So it still looks sort of new, but I wanted this one to feel a little bit more like it was an older building that's been revamped and turned into apartments. So it's got that modern touch of the flower beds, for instance, but then it's old concrete texture around it that's been patched up a little bit. So it's not brand new from the ground up development like our row houses over there. It's quite different to that. And I think that's one thing I really like about this island overall, is there's so many different things to it. Like, you've got construction down one end, or industry. You've got a brand new modern housing development. And then you've got like this old condo block that's been revamped. Maybe it was once offices or something, and it's been converted and changed and improved. And then of course we've got the rec centre down here, which is a really nice combination of all of those things, with the old abandoned, I want to say, water pump down here. Used a few decals on the roof here, some of the nice moss decals, just to give it a little bit of extra wear and tear, like it's been here for a while. I'd like to think maybe it's been converted into toilets for the rec ground. I don't know. It's quite smart around it, so obviously there has been some smartening up of this area, and then we do have this little lovely trash back area over here. So I'm thinking maybe there is something that goes on in this old water pump building, but it's just they haven't spent the time or the money to clean the roof, shall we say. Then we've got a tiny bit of flooding down this end, which is interesting. Hopefully that's not going to get any worse, and it is just going to stay a little puddle on that end section. I did also add in a bit of a kind of interesting curve to the end of the road here to make it look like it was a turning around point, but it doesn't look quite like how I built it now that it's all flooded there, so you definitely need to keep an eye on that. Then we go into the main rec grounds. We've got that grey asphalt basketball court, as we saw, the tennis court here, which I've just added some extra colours to. And then, of course, our really bright, colourful playground. And there doesn't appear to be anyone using any of this at the moment. But there's a lot of cars parked here, so the car park's getting some use at least. And hopefully we'll see some people using the park eventually. And then the final thing, we do have the rail line. So I did actually just come in and use some of the El Glendo's dirt path networks for this. So this is actually a sort of old cobblestone one, which I quite like for the old abandoned rail. Could imagine maybe it was once built on cobblestone. Might be something semi-realistic at least. So yeah, quite enjoying that. And then we've got places where the trees are really overgrowing it, and less so in other places. It's really jumpy going up this river edge, so apologies for the visuals on that aspect. And you can see here at the end where bushes kind of overtaken the end of the rail line here as it gets converted into the pedestrian path. So pretty simple, actually, on that front. I think it works. It adds a nice little extra feature to the edge of the island. And yeah, really liking how it looks in front of Baril here as well, particularly this condo development, and also the rec centre here as well. Really nice looking onto those houses there. So yeah, we do need to fill out that strip there, which we'll do on a stream, and then we've still got a ton more development to do in Baril. So coming up in an episode very, very soon. But for today, that is going to be it. So if you have enjoyed the episode, likes, comments and shares are really greatly appreciated. There's ways to support the channel in the description below if you would like to do so. But that's all from me for now, so thank you so much for tuning in, and I'll catch you again next time. Bye bye!